Hello everyone, this is Clive Swansbourne. Welcome to Piano Insights. That was the beginning of Rachmaninoff's Prelude in G sharp minor, opus 32 number 12. I think it's one of Rachmaninoff's finest preludes. He wrote 24 preludes. Perhaps the best known one is the C sharp minor, opus 3, which he published separately. It was a piece which became immensely popular, and he was sort of forced to play it as an encore when he became a concert pianist for a living when he arrived in America. And he got fed up with it, and he couldn't understand why everybody wanted to hear that prelude and not some of his others. And I'm sure he was thinking perhaps of this one being one of those others, because I really think that this is one of his very finest preludes. It's quite short. The Rachmaninoff preludes on the whole are quite a lot longer. For example, the Chopin preludes, which can be all played in one evening. It's very unusual to hear all these played in one evening, and I think probably the average length of these Rachmaninoff preludes is about around 5 minutes long. So they're a lot longer. There's one for every key, but they were published separately. Opus 23 has 10 preludes, and Opus 32 has 13 preludes, written a little bit later, I think. And the Opus 3 Prelude in C sharp minor. This one is full of the yearning for the motherland, I think. It has a very Russian kind of soulfulness about it. And that's the most important thing to express in this piece. You can't play this in strict time, for example. I mean, it just doesn't work. And you can't play it in the same dynamic range for any length of time at all. It's constantly shifting. The emotional landscape is constantly shifting here. I would think that you could call the opening of this fairly triumphant sounding, like a carillon of bells. But this is quashed very quickly by the entrance of this wonderful melody. It's already beginning to droop even in its first few notes. It starts off fairly confidently, then it starts to immediately droop. There's a sort of sadness about this melody, and it continues to move down, all the way down to here. It moves down a full octave, and a little more, before it rises up. It has a little bit of hopefulness, but it's still in G sharp minor. So very soulful music. I would suggest that you listen to not only the concertos, number 2 and 3 are very important ones, but also the cello sonata, which has a second movement, which is just plain gorgeous, and it's one of the longest cello melodies. I mean, one of the longest melodies he wrote, and it's just one of his most beautiful melodies too. So at least try and acquaint yourself with those, and you'll get an idea, I think, what he's trying to express here. So you see how there's a lot of ways that you're kind of forced to play these carillons. You start off fairly straightforward with a crescendo and a diminuendo. You've got to really pull back in order to allow this to focus, because if you're still going, it takes away from the focus on the melody here. And also, you really need to lengthen this. It can't be up to speed. That's no good. You've got to pull back in tempo as well here. It seems like the only time you can get even close to where the original speed of these is between melody notes, but you're sort of forced to slow down here quite a lot from to that. And then when you've got something like this, it's very slow there. So it's very, very flexible, and that's what makes this first page one of the hardest, I think, to play, because you're constantly moving tempo, moving dynamic. It's constantly pushing forward, hoping to be a bit more, it's accelerating, hoping to be a bit more hopeful and so forth, and then sinking down again. So a lot of expressive chords in the left hand. For example, this one. So that needs time. You can't just go straight into it. No, that doesn't make any sense. I don't do the writs in exactly the same places. I think these are always guidelines. If you try and follow the exact moment that he writes the writ, you're going to be paralyzed by analyzing, the paralysis of analysis. You just need to go with that as a guideline for freedom of expression in this music, and not stick to the literal timings of the ritenutos and the menomossos. I don't think Rachmaninoff stays with it either, and he tends to just play so freely you wonder if it's really him playing, because sometimes he doesn't follow his own instructions. Where it says andante, he'll play, presto and that kind of thing. So it's just a very free style of playing, and it's obviously the whole purpose is to bring out the expression. Now the second time, let me just point out one thing here. Two little technical points here. This one. It's a very awkward phrase because it becomes a very important part of the melody. And then we've got to change hand position here. Very awkward. If you don't have a very big hand, it's very hard to take it in one hand position. So what I suggest is this. Bring two over, keeping the thumb there, and then switching. And this one as well on the next page. For me it's the smoothest, that one. You're rotating around the thumb and not having to do any jumps or skips. And with these chords down here, it's obviously essential that this comes out, you see. And so if you do, a lot of people just sink into these and they completely dominate. It sort of snarls at you, and these get swallowed up. The melody notes get swallowed up. So these have got to be really, really quiet, you see. Another thing is, it's much easier to get from there to there with this in the middle if you do it with the thumb. And hold it with and here again. You've got mostly thumbs. It's much easier than jumping around with second finger. So two very important things there. To keep the bass part of those chords, the lower part, just really quiet. And then here we've got the change of key to the major, which is, I think, one of the most beautiful parts of the piece. This chord itself needs a special attention. Special attention, because it really does deserve it. It's just such a gorgeous part. And then this is just sunshine, a ray of sunshine. So give it time, give it lots of time. tenor. Sorry. That's the only thing that matters there. So everything down here should be really quiet. So all of this should be really quiet and very well controlled. One of the things I notice when I'm teaching this is that I have to tell the student just not to bring those out. It's very tempting to go sort of whenever there's a melody note, then this comes out too loud as well, you see. You've got to be really well balanced so that these never come out sounding like beats. The only time they can come out really sounding like beats is this next part, which is very jubilant and much more straightforward actually. You could start off real jubilant and just keep the pedal down. Change there. Try and take these in one hand and then rotate back to the chord. I think it's much easier than jumping. I like to bring this little chromatic thing out starting here. This is an awkward thing too. Just sort of bring it down with the diminuendo, and then here. Now the nice thing about this is you don't really have to do much rubato. It's not very expressive in the same way as this first page is, which makes it simpler to conceive and to play without too much complication. And then this. That's a little bit awkward. So you've got this chord here, and then this thing here. I prefer to do it this way, all in one movement. Just catch the pedal at the right place. It's easier than jumping to this. Each one of these, it's all coming in contramotion. It only starts going parallel at the end there. Something he got, I think, from Tchaikovsky. Tchaikovsky loved to have his treble and bass parts going in opposite directions, either to close in to something really sad or to expand to these enormous orchestral climaxes. And then what Rachmaninoff... so I wouldn't play all of these the same. The first one is fairly big. Come down with the ret and the diminuendo to almost nothing here. It's quite difficult to control these. It's important that it's linear, that everything is brought out with the counterpoints between the two hands, and that these are to the minimum, you see. And then here again, we're moving in different directions. We've got this in the left hand. see, on this page also is a lot of dynamic and tempo contrast. He marks our tempo here. So in other words, I actually prefer to start off slow and then ease into it. I think it's more exciting. And to make each one still sort of tentative. There's more, and then another one of those. This one starts off a little louder and maybe starts to get a little quicker. These are the poco crescendo here, which is what you're doing, but I like to think of it more as this one. The first line is soft, and the second one starting here. No particular bigger than, and then this next one is the biggest of all, and so on. And then it just brings us to this huge climax here. Climax, fortissimo. Perdendo means it dies away. Don't be all virtuoso there. I think it spoils it to just rush it. I like this ending actually to be a little slower than the beginning. You know, so it's been on a long journey. It's pretty exhausted. If it's sort of up tempo, I think it's too jolly. And then this. You can even slow down a little bit there. Anyway, so I slow down a lot here. I like the crossed hands here. You get a real big sound on that. Match it with these chords, which is harder. And then the left hand comes in with a single note here. We're back with the cello solo here. Take your time on that. And these notes are the only thing which are important. So okay, thank you very much for listening. That is that for the G sharp minor prelude. I do recommend that you not only listen to other Rachmaninoff works, such as another great long melody, a very soulful melody, is from the Second Symphony. The second movement of that also has a stunningly beautiful melody, but particularly the one taken by the clarinet, which comes in just after the first orchestral exposition of the really famous melody. There's a beautiful melody in the solo clarinet. There's a gorgeous movement all the way through, of course. But also I would maybe read some of the literature of Russia to get an idea of what the Russian soul was all about. I particularly love Chekhov because you can read him in, you can read short stories in a great less time than it takes to read a Dostoevsky or Tolstoy novel. And not only that, but I find him the most approachable of the Russian writers. Tolstoy, I mean, he's magnificent, of course, but there's something more, more on a more approachable scale, I guess, in Chekhov. And he has so many characters, all of which he sympathizes with. You can tell that very much. And no matter how rascally they are. And I think it's a very good window into the Russian soul. So I'd recommend the short stories and plays of Chekhov particularly. Get an insight into this kind of music. All right. Thank you very much for listening. Please share, subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye-bye.